All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to some Civil War poetry. I'm Vincent Hannum, coming to you live from Minneapolis, Minnesota. 7:39. Gotta say, this is the latest I've started the show. I slept in for the first time since starting this show. I overslept. So we, it's the penultimate episode. I think I did pretty good. So I apologize, but also, you know. I did pretty good. So, anyways, today we're gonna keep things rolling, keep it short and sweet. We've got an Emily Dickinson poem. We have a Confederate poem called Little Giffen, which is super interesting, the history behind that, but I'll get to that here later. Um, yeah. So sit tight and let me read you some poetry here. The book is Poetry of the Civil War. It's an anthology divided into two halves, one the blue, one the gray. And I'll read, and I have been reading a poem from either side just to do a little comparing and contrasting. What I'm finding now is that we are definitely at war's end, and one side is feeling much better about things than the other. So let's see what Emily Dickinson has to say. She is our blue poet of the morning. Before we do that, however, I would like to, of course, feature the bio round and read you a little bit about Emily herself. Just gotta find. Okay, lived from 1830 to 1886. Was born in Amherst, Massachusetts, to a prominent New England family. Though one of the great American poets, she saw only 7 of her 1,775 poems published, all of them anonymously. It wasn't until Poems, the first collection of Dickinson's poetry, published 4 years after the poet's death, that her work began to receive proper notice. Ooh, I haven't gotten them out of my system yet. Hey guys, I'm here now, so let's rock and roll. Emily Dickinson. Her poem is called "My Portion Is Defeat Today." Two things about that. One, today, and this is spelled with a dash, and I just love it when I come across a spelling of today or tomorrow. That's like that. Second, the poem, as well as the other one, Little Giffen, is linked out below in the description. So please do that if you want to follow along. You don't need to. My portion is defeat today, a paler luck than victory. Less peons, fewer bells. The drums don't follow me with tunes. Defeat a something dumber means, more difficult than bells. 'Tis populous with bone and stain, and men too straight to bend again, and piles of solid moan, and chips of blank in boyish eyes, and shreds of prayer and death's surprise stamped visible in stone. There's something prouder over there. The trumpets tell it in the air. How different victory to him who has it, and the one who, to have had it, would have been contenter to die. My portion is defeat today. My portion is defeat today, a paler luck than victory. Less pains, fewer bells. The drums don't follow me with tunes. Defeat, a something dumber, means more difficult than bells. 'Tis populous with bone and stain, and men too straight to bend again, and piles of stone of solid moan, and chips of blank in boyish eyes, and shreds of prayer and death's surprise stamped visible in stone. There's something prouder over there. The trumpets tell it in the air. How different victory to him who has it, and the one who, to have had it, would have been contenteder to die. Man, the thing with Emily Dickinson that I've come across, and this is the most I've read of her, is A, they're short, B, that allows me to reread it. So thanks for letting me do that, because I really had to just focus up and be like, okay, what the heck am I reading here? I think there's a lot of great lines and chips of blank and boyish eyes, just this dead stare. You can imagine piles of solid moan, MOAN, just masses of humanity just moaning. How Victor, there's something prouder over there. Maybe I mean, I know she was cooped up in her house, so maybe she's speaking just across town, victory over there. That's great. But how about the losers who just would rather die? So that's interesting. That's that's she didn't seem thrilled about the end of the war. I mean, she's just kind of like an objective observer, just being like, yeah, victory, great. There's still kids coming home with PTSD. There's still men without limbs. There's still losers who have to live with the trauma of just defeat. I'm going to mark that one. That's a good one. I'm going to remember that one. My portion is Defeat Today by Emily Dickinson. Okay. And our Confederate poem is called Little Giffen. It is by Francis Orray Ticknor, who I know we have featured on the show before. And I believe it's a Mr. Oh my goodness gracious. Francis Orray Ticknor. Lived from 1822 to 1874. Was born in Fortville, Georgia. Having earned a medical degree from the Philadelphia College of Medicine in 1842, he set up a practice as a country doctor in Columbus, Georgia. Two collections of his poetry, the Poems of Frank O. Ticknor, M.D., 1879, and the Poems of Francis Orray Ticknor, 1911, were published posthumously. That's right, I remember because I was like, the Poems of Frank O. Ticknor, M.D. Could be like a medical drama. Well, here's his poem, Little Giffen. I'll read it and then I'll go into the historical basis afterwards. Out of the focal and foremost fire, out of the hospital walls as dire, smitten of grape shot and gangrene, 18th battle and he 16. Spectre such as you seldom seen, little Giffen of Tennessee. Take him and welcome, the surgeon said. Little the doctor can help the dead. So we took him and brought him where the balm was sweet on the summer air, and we laid him down on a wholesome bed. Utter Lazarus, heel to head. And we watched the war with bated breath, skeleton boy against skeleton death. Months of torture, how many such, weary weeks of the stick and crutch, and still a glint in the steel blue eye told of a spirit that wouldn't die. And he didn't. Nay, more, in death's despite the crippled skeleton learned to write. Dear mother, at first, of course, and then dear captain, inquiring about the men. Captain's answer, of 85, Giffen and I are left alive. Word of gloom from the war one day. Johnston's pressed at the front, they say. Little Giffen was up and away. A tear, his first, as he bade goodbye, dimmed the glint of his steel blue eye. I'll write if spared. There was news of the fight, but none of Giffen. He did not write. I sometimes fancy that, were I a king of the princely knights of the golden ring, with the song of the minstrel in mine ear and the tender legend that trembles here, I'd give the best on his bended knee, the whitest soul of my chivalry, for little Giffen of Tennessee. Okay, well, so I like that poem. It flowed really nicely. There's a story to it. There was some dialogue. I just want to share a little bit about. So, Little Giffen was a real individual. Again, a lot of Confederate poems seem to be in tribute to real individuals. And I'll just read this. It's from CivilWarHome.com. This poem is true in every detail. In fact, often misstated, are set forth in a letter which the poet's granddaughter, Miss Michelle Ticknor, courteously furnished for these pages. During the war, the wife of the poet daily visited the improvised hospitals of Columbus, Georgia. So Ticknor's wife. In one of these, the old Banks building, Mrs. Ticknor first saw the boy, Isaac Newton Giffen, and was so haunted by his pitiful condition that when the doctors declared his case hopeless, she carried him in her own carriage to Torch Hill, the country home of the Ticknors. There, under the personal care of Dr. and Mrs. Ticknor, remember, Francis was an MD, Giffen won his fight against death. Brought to Torch Hill in October 1864, he left only in March 1865 on receiving news of Johnston's position. So remember, the war ends in April. So it's March. And Giffen, all healed up, is like, no, there's still a chance for victory. I gotta go. During his convalescence, Mrs. Ticknor taught Giffen to read and write, and his deep gratitude towards the Ticknors leaves only one solution to his fate. How he met it, however, remains as obscure as his family history. That his father was a blacksmith in the mountains of East Tennessee is the only positive fact of his ancestry, so we don't know anything about him, except his father was a blacksmith in East Tennessee. He was 16 years of age when taken by Mrs. Ticknor and had been engaged in 18 battles and skirmishes. There was a line in the poem about that. 18 battles, 16 years, something like that. It will thus be seen that the boy was wounded in one of the battles about Atlanta when Johnston and Hood were opposing Sherman. We may suppose that the captain's reply given in the poem was written after the Battle of Nashville in December 64. In March 1865, he's all healed up now. Johnston was again opposing Sherman, this time in the Carolinas, and it must have been in one of the closing battles of the war that little Giffen lost his life. So, man, can you imagine just making it to the end of a war and then not making it? That's tough. But now he's immortalized in a poem that at least I have read and at least you have listened to. So there you be, little Giffen of Tennessee. Tomorrow is our final morning, ladies and gentlemen, of some Civil War poetry. Before I tell you who we're reading, I just want to let you know that you can subscribe to Mischief Tales. A link to that is in the description below as well. That will be the future home of this show, of this maybe podcast. Who knows? Still working that out. But whatever it looks like, there will be guest hosts, and we'll be doing some deep dives into poems like Little Giffen. Yeah, so tomorrow is the last episode. So thank you for sticking it out with me, all one person here this morning. I do say there's one person here this morning. It could just be me, but a lot of people do watch this in the afternoon. So I don't want to undersell it too much. That's what I'm saying. So tomorrow, lo and behold, our final Union poem is Yes by Walt Whitman, and it is the celebrated Oh Captain, My Captain. So do stick around for that one. And our final Confederate poem is by, come on, Abram Joseph Ryan, and that is called CSA, as in Confederate States of America, but CSA and Oh Captain, My Captain. Coming to you tomorrow, live, some Civil War poetry. Thanks. So long.